How did I get here? I only planned on making this video if I managed to get through Purgatory's roster, but if I felt accomplished, I would be lying. This video terrifies me, save for some characters whose place is obvious. I have never had a harder time writing a video. I have rewritten this script countless times, and I have repeatedly failed to justify why certain characters should be above another. There have been points where I've had very little hope, because at the end of the tunnel, it's only expected that I give the same treatment to Team Kengan, which is fun unless you consider the bleeding ulcer, the metastasized tumor, and the loathsome dung eater. But I have never felt like giving up. I'm the one who made this mess, and I have to clean it up because I've never liked anything more than Kengan. The fear and despair of making this video does not come close to the same of not having done this story justice. Even if I can't make videos fast enough, even if it does not do well, I'm making this video happen as if it is my last. So enjoy my attempt at wiping the slate clean. The strongest character on the team is contested by both Faye and Roland. In terms of physical abilities, Faye outclasses Roland. He taught Waka how to fly with the power of his Nico-style techniques, and ate his all-you-can-eat buffet of knees despite his opponent applying a countermeasure that nerfed his defensive technique. Given that Toa physically outclasses Roland, and is as powerful as Waka if you're willing to excuse his superior technique, Faye is stronger than him. In terms of technique, Roland outclasses Faye. Since the fighter that can predict the furthest will succeed in making the first blow, Roland has equal foresight to Kuroki because they both failed to land significant blows on each other. While Kuroki did not have his magnificent beard, and may have been less experienced than his Annihilation Tournament counterpart, in the tournament itself he was concerned that his foresight was rusty. So after facing Roland, his foresight did not improve. Therefore, Roland has technique that few can surpass or match, Faye included. Although Oma's Nico style was effective against Kuroki, he was only able to land his attacks because of his preconceived notion that the Nico style could not be used with the advance, and his caution toward Demon's Bane, which slowed his reaction to other attacks. Since Faye does not regulate the possessing spirit to the same degree as Oma, and cannot instill the same caution with Demon's Bane, Faye can't overcome Roland's foresight through his technique. Even though Roland is physically inferior to Faye, he can overcome this gap through his technique. Since fighting in close quarters enabled Sealot practitioners to strike from outside their opponent's awareness, they can reduce their opponent's ability to endure blows by preventing them from defending in a timely manner and striking them without their consent. Also, the precision necessary to fight at such an intimate range helps them strike vitals, reducing the amount of power needed to make their opponent's climax by striking a vulnerable region of their body. So, Roland can bully opponents who outclass him, like how he sexually abuses his wife by using his techniques in the best possible manner. Therefore, since Faye cannot overcome Roland's technique, he will use his foresight to seal Faye's Nico style by countering his movements before they begin, and limiting the match to close quarters where he can use his techniques to defeat him. While Faye should be able to overcome Roland's foresight like how Oma was able to overcome it through the advance, he needed to unleash the advance in short bursts because using the advance at full blast for a prolonged duration would not work because Roland would still take advantage of Oma's loss of precision in close quarters. So unless the possessing spirit is used in small bursts, it cannot be used to surpass Roland's foresight. But when Faye tried to reduce the output of his divine demon, it was so noticeable that Waka could exploit it. Therefore, despite having more power than Oma, Faye does not have the skill to control divine demon to nearly the same extent. So, knowing what Roland has said on the matter, Faye does not have the skill to overcome his foresight. While Faye can see in slow motion through his enhanced perceptions, it remains to be seen whether or not the kinetic vision of Fallen Demon can contend with pre-initiative. So, I imagine that there will be a stalemate where Roland and Faye can dodge each other's strikes. But Faye has no other choice but to continue using Divine Demon because he would lose. Since it hurts the user and damages their organs, Faye will fail to keep up with the flood of information entering his brain. Therefore, when his body inevitably fails him, Roland will be able to end the match. So, Roland is the strongest character on Team Purgatory. Take a bow. The weakest character on Team Purgatory is between Tarashi, Falcon, or Alan. Compared to Tarashi, who does not know how to fight, Alan possesses top-class fighting talent, and Falcon possesses first-rate combat ability. A gap in talent or ability may be compensated for by Tarashi's vibrations and the Emperor's Eye. However, such abilities possess their own limitations. Tarashi cannot vibrate forever because he has to cool down and cannot vibrate the region around his brain. Also, abilities like the Fist Eye cause exhaustion and a loss of focus. Since Tarashi cannot turn the Emperor's Eye off, he will have trouble fighting for long periods of time. So, Alan, who is a part of the Westward faction, who are considered a different breed by the standards of the Kuri clan, should outlast Tarashi and exert his talent against someone with no talent. As for Falcon, his misdirection involves imprinting the threat of his claws by performing hand shields. This performance enables him to instill enough caution to execute feints. Since this trick works if his opponent is afraid of his claws, and that his claws are able to freak out the average Joe, Falcon's misdirection should be effective against Tarashi because he is an average Joe. So, Tarashi should be susceptible to Falcon's technique. Therefore, Falcon can defeat him. So congratulations, Tarashi. You are the weakest character on the team. Thank you for holding everyone back so the Kengan Association could win. Take a bow. Next in line is either Alan or Falcon. In terms of physical abilities, they are not relevant. Of course, physical abilities like power, speed, and endurance can determine the outcome of a match. But this is a special circumstance where the physical relationship between two characters cannot be determined. Alan got split down the middle before he could prove anything, and Falcon's performance against Rahito was heavily determined by his technique. Although I could alphabet soup my way to the conclusion that Falcon could be physically superior to Alan, which I did, there are details in the story that refute such a connection, but, most importantly, every character is not just a weaker or stronger version of another. They are all fighters with a unique style that could outperform another, even if they are inferior. In terms of technical skill, Falcon's misdirection would not be effective against Alan. Just like the Kure clan, the Westward faction have evolved abnormal resilience and pain tolerance to endure lethal blows from armed and unarmed combatants. Since Alan is a part of a group that is naturally superior to humanity, it is unlikely that Falcon could execute his feints because he knows that his claws do not pose a threat to him. Also, Falcon's sidestep would not work either. Although it is effective against opponents with more insight, Alan does not have insight, nor that much awareness, so luckily, it would not work. Even with his ace in the hole, the Toxic Avenger is not reliable because it only takes effect after repeatedly entering the bloodstream. Since Falcon's technique would not work against Alan, it would be harder to poison him. Therefore, Alan would more than likely defeat Falcon because his techniques are very situational, and Alan is not the situation he wants to be in. The rest of the Upper Echelon are dominated by Toa, Lou, Carlos, and Giroda. Before you say that this man really tried to slip in Carlos like how Sandro tried to slip in a gay relationship, he is Giroda's equal. They are both Kuroki-like individuals who are so strong that they became isolated from a society that no longer had a place for them. While claims of Carlos being on par with Kuroki turned out to be wrong, Giroda marches to a similar beat. Although Giroda is said to be on par with Roland, this is not the case because Roland is the king of Purgatory who reigns above the rest of the A-listers. If you disagree with me, I'll leave you with this. If Giroda really was on par with Kuroki and Roland, would Purgatory still be a monarchy? While one is a master of boxing who gave other disciplines a chance, and the other a master of judo who never gave other disciplines so much as a glance, they are equals because they're skilled, yet struggle to defeat their opponents. The ways in which these guys win is through their skill, that the difference is so vast that their opponent cannot attack, while they themselves get to attack, with the possibility of making those attacks register. So, Giroda cannot defeat Carlos. Although Giroda was able to surpass the fist eye, he only did so because the swing does not make the traditional motions of a throw and was too minuscule for the fist eye to see rather than being too fast. But, through pre-initiative, Carlos is able to counter movements he cannot see. Therefore, Carlos can overcome the swing. Even if Carlos lost his muscular power, it can be compensated for by his skill as a genius of striking. Since fighters can amplify their power through their skill by precisely striking trigger points, the reason Carlos was able to crack Gowland's forearm is by applying his striking genius to precisely attack his weak spots. So, given enough time, Carlos will inevitably land his techniques to deal real damage. Also, Carlos targets his opponent's joints, which are more susceptible to being broken. Therefore, Carlos can beat Giroda because he's the only one who can land his techniques and can make his attacks hurt. As for Toa, his story is the same. Although he failed to summon Kuroki-like comparisons, he is a seeker who abandoned society because it was not big enough for him. Also, since only the strongest A-listers get to challenge the king, and that Toa got the opportunity to fight Roland, he would be at the top of the A-list division and in contention with other top A-listers like Giroda or Carlos. Unlike those two, he not only has good technique, but the best physical attributes on the team. While Giroda could throw Toa in such a way that he could not break his fall, or Carlos could dance around him while throwing obliques, I doubt their techniques will have the chance of hurting a guy whose only mistake was misjudging the only move that could faceplant him. So, Toa beats Giroda and Carlos because he is strong enough to ignore their technique. Next in line is Lou. While he is a seeker of Daddy's approval, his technique is top class, and he has access to top class physical abilities. Although Formless can be exploited by masters like Giroda and Carlos who specialize in a single discipline, neither of them fight like Gowland. They do not use their unequal speed and finesse to pressure their opponent without giving them time to think. Giroda uses counters to turn his opponent's attack against him, and Carlos capitalizes on mistakes and meticulously targets his opponent's weak spots. so it is unlikely that they could exploit his technique. Also, Lu's technique is tricky enough to perplex top-class fighters, and, without the assistance of kinetic vision or foresight, his moves become harder to exploit. For Giroda, it's not a question of whether Lu can overcome the swing, but whether or not he can overcome Formless. So he's not beating him. For Carlos, since Agito had the foresight to counter and defend against Lu's techniques, Carlos may not be as helpless, but he would still lose. Apart from the strongest, Lu's only challenge is Towa. While Lu can match Towa's natural abilities through Guhun, it comes at the cost of his technique. Lu is not selectively bred to handle Guhun, so he would take damage that weakens his technique. But can Towa exploit it? His technique is good, and he could execute it better if Lu's technique declines, but compared to other top-class fighters, Towa is not flexible enough to adapt to situations where he is disadvantaged, and he does not have the kinetic vision nor the foresight to deal with Formless. So even if he sacrificed technique for power, Lu should be able to beat Towa. Despite standing atop the upper echelon, Lu is not in contention for being the strongest on the team. For Faye, the Nico style might not be very effective against Lu's technique, but through the kinetic vision of Divine Demon, Faye would decipher his movements and beat him. As for Roland, his foresight would hold its own against Lu. Of course, Lu was able to overcome Agito's foresight, but Roland has better foresight than him. Even so, Lu's Formless should hold its own against Roland. Although Kuroki was able to find an opening against Agito, Lu's Formless is superior. Therefore, no one has a clear advantage. So, there will be a stalemate where Lu and Roland try to find an opening. But, Roland can break the stalemate by attacking Lu from his blind spot. Since he does not have the foresight nor the senses to avoid such an attack, Lu would be vulnerable to the invisible elbow. Also, since attacks that come from outside a fighter's awareness can define a match, Roland would beat Lu. Even using Guhun, the outcome is the same because his technique becomes weaker, so while Lu is not the strongest, he is in the top 3. The lower echelon is dominated by Nicholas, Naidan, Leo, and Yumigahama. Compared to Alan, Yumigahama has beaten Jose twice, a pro wrestler who made Ryuki recognize that he would not beat him unless he fought seriously. Also, because Ryuki believes that he would have to break his promise of exclusively killing worms if he faced Yumi, he is strong enough to force Ryuki to kill him. Although Alan has top-class fighting talent, Yumigahama became the Fang of Mitsudo due to his talent, so I doubt Alan could beat Yumi, nor could Falcon, and much less Terasi. As for Leo, his place on the team is dependent on where Naidan is placed, because despite beating him, Leo would lose more than half of his matches against him if they were to fight 10 times. As for Naidan, he is not as strong as Julius, Wakatsuki, and Rayan. This statement is contradictory because on all accounts, Julius and Waka have more raw strength than Rayan. So if Rayan can match Naidan, he cannot be as powerful as Julius and Waka because Rayan is not as strong as them. Since Ryuki's only option was to kill Naidan, he's more comparable to the likes of Yumi, Akoya, and Adam, rather than Julius, Waka, or the loathsome Dung Eater. But Naidan is more skilled than Yumi. While Naidan is as precise as a machine and his foresight and Bak complement each other, Yumi's movements are wasteful and his technique is seamlessly incorporated. Also, since betraying Mitsudo, Yumi stopped training, so it's unlikely that Yumi could beat Naidan. Also, compared to Naidan, Leo would be stronger than Yumi because he would have a more favorable record against him. Next in line is Nicholas. Although Nicholas lost to Jose, he is Ryuki's equal because he only fights seriously when he wants to kill. Although his paralysis is less effective against large opponents like Yumi, Nicholas is faster, has more appropriate technique, and is more adaptable. Also, his paralysis is only reduced in effectiveness and not nullified by a larger frame, so Nicholas beats Yumi. As for Leo, while he is a more powerful and prodigious striker than Nicholas, he has a smaller body that is more vulnerable to paralysis, so Nicholas would beat Leo. Apart from the upper echelon, the only challenge that Nicholas can face is Naidan, but Nicholas can overcome Naidan's strength and wrestling through his paralysis. Also, since Ryuki was fast enough to overcome the Eye of the Sky, Nicholas will not get caught by Naidan because he is faster than Ryuki. So, Nicholas beats Naidan. Despite standing atop the lower echelon, Nicholas cannot contend with the upper echelon. Lu is too strong and too tricky for Nicholas to decipher, while Toa is too big and Jiroda and Carlos are too skilled. Jiroda's technique is invisible to the naked eye, so it would be difficult for Nicholas to react to it, while Carlos has the foresight to avoid all of his attacks, and the skill to make his attacks hurt. So Nicholas is not the strongest nor the weakest. He is stuck in the Goldilocks zone. The same can be said about Naidan. Jiroda and Carlos are too skilled, and Naidan is not strong enough nor skilled enough to fight Toa or Lu. While Naidan can counter moves he cannot see through his foresight, Jiroda's technique surpasses human comprehension, and, unlike his opponent, he does not need to grab to perform a throw, so Jiroda beats him because Naidan has a period of vulnerability that he can exploit. As for Carlos, he will never get caught by Naidan because he is too fast and has the foresight to avoid all of his attacks. Since Carlos can overcome Naidan's foresight through either his speed or pre-initiative, he can strike from outside Naidan's awareness. So, Carlos will have an easier time landing his techniques and attacking weak points because Naidan will not be able to defend properly nor prepare to take damage. Also, in Mongolian wrestling, all attacks below the waist are banned, so a Mongolian wrestler like Naidan is not prepared to defend against oblique kicks or any of his other attacks that may land below the waist. Therefore, compared to Jiroda, Carlos, and the rest of the upper echelon, Naidan is outclassed. So there we have it, in order from weakest to strongest. The Silent Nightmare in 13th, the Roving Death in 12th, the King of Slaughter in 11th, the Traitor Fang in 10th, the Serpent in 9th, the Hawk of Ordos in 8th, the Grim Reaper of Paris in 7th, the Gentle King in 6th, El Dorado in 5th, the Beast of Destruction in 4th, the Centipede in 3rd, the Toad in 2nd, and the Monster of Manila in 1st. Even so, how strong is Team Purgatory? Well, I don't know. But they are weaker than the Kengan Association.
Oh, scary! Oh, shiver my timbers! Shut up, man!
Falcon really tried to talk no Jutsu Kuroki. The King of Slaughter? More like the King of Getting Slaughtered. Misasa called you a bitch and that's your comeback. At least make fun of his height. Like, boy so sore he can't go on rides at Disney World. You didn't even try. You were always the weakest Demon Fist. Naidan somehow managed to die in creative mode. France lost the World Cup, exposed in Ultra 4K HD in front of a wide audience.
Imagine me beating the crap out of you. Yeah. Not so tough now, huh?
Julius has a better cut and he's bald. This dude's attachment to Nico is proof that his father was never present in his life. How is that tiger vessel pack hitting? That aged like your wife.